Inua Ellams, award-winning poet, playwright, curator, and for the rest of his introduction, I'm going to have to pick this paper up because it's a bit of a mouthful. A fellow of the Royal Society of Literature and someone who holds an MBE for services to the arts in the King's Birthday Honours.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us on Entrepreneur Middle East today and giving us your time. Inua, your poetry sits at the intersection of identity, displacement, and destiny, all of which are very deep and vulnerable themes that also coexist in a space where pop cultural themes and identity labels emerge every day. When you are sort of faced with your own ego and bias, and now these digital trends that you sort of need to keep up with as well, anything of that sort which tends to threaten your creative process, how do you then stay tethered to your creative vision?
Wow, that's a big question. I don't think I have a specific method or biological algorithm that I stick to. I think I have various principles that try and pilot me through everything. There's a friend of mine who refuses to read any book published within the last 10 years because he thinks good literature will stand the test of time. So I try to think about trends in that light. What is new? Wow. What is happening just now? Should I invest my time in this, or is it just a passing fad? As a poet, I try to create work that feels timeless. Like the best photographs, out of any time, it tells you a story that is specific to that moment, but it also feels to live larger and beyond the frame and speaks to the present. So whatever it is I'm creating, I never really try to have knee-jerk reactions to the present. So whatever is happening in the world, I try and keep track of it, but I never try to respond to it because this space of information sharing that we are in, it is new and it isn't healthy. I think the brain as an engine isn't equipped to do this, and it isn't natural. There's something unnatural about how we are living now. And I think part of being a poet or being an artist is to step out of that and to question all of it. So that's what I do. I sort of sit back and wait for it to pass me, then see what lingers and try and respond to that and find what is universal and timeless around it.
Yeah. I think as unnatural as it is for us to sort of keep up with such ever-evolving trends, there is also this responsibility on creative entrepreneurs to sort of monetize the work that they do. And one way for them to sort of reach the masses beyond the arenas and the theaters that they perform in, for example, is social media. But what that also means is then that a snippet of an intricately crafted piece is now on the internet for millions to have a discourse over. Some might argue that that is also a necessary branding strategy in certain areas of creative entrepreneurship. I'm curious, how do you then balance, or rather, have nuance when you are selling your creativity in parts?
Yeah. I don't think you go into writing poetry for money, which means then trying to create a quote-unquote product that sells, that reacts to the present is a pointless task. It is by design unpoetic. So I never really tried to do so. So much of the work required to write poetry or any art that is of value, that is lasting, actually requires deep thought and lots of time thinking and structuring. To present an iota of it does a disservice to the amount of time you've spent creating your work. So also, I never tried to do so, and also encourage my students, my colleagues not to do so. Feel free to share an excerpt of your work, but not to think of that excerpt as being even the capstone, the pyramid stone of the work, right? If you share something on the side so people get the sense of the larger, not the thing at the top, which tends to be the most explosive, the most emotive, the most emotional. And algorithms are primed to exploit human emotion, which also releases the worst parts of us. So I never try to create work that way if I share any things from the side as opposed to the top.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that the algorithm tries to exploit the human emotion, because my next question to you is, despite this algorithm race, It is the content that is that we connect to on a very human level that actually stays with the end user at the end of the day. But while social media has become a sort of avenue for creative folks to showcase their work, the level of visibility it offers has in some ways made creative people feel like they need to be less vulnerable. Just because, for the lack of a better word, vulnerability is not seen as something that can be commodified. How do you, as someone who has been emotionally bare in his work and has also made a successful brand, so to say, of it, how would you say that balance can be achieved of, being vulnerable in your craft, but also having, say, a successful branding strategy, so to speak?
When I think of my brand, I think of myself as a living, breathing human being who is full of contradictions and full of mistakes and who constantly evolves. I see that in the sweep of my work. What I wrote and how I wrote, 15 years ago isn't how I write now. I'm embarrassed by those things because the style is terrible, it's overwritten, it's long. But what I try to do is embrace all of that, even when I'm embarrassed about it. I have this performance show called Search Party, where I sit in front of an audience with everything that I've ever written in, 22 decades or so of writing. And I ask the audience to shout out words to me, which I type into the search function and read to them, text that contains their words. And sometimes the text that pops up is a text that I don't like, that I think is old, but I embrace it. So I think in social media, that's also what I try and do. I never try to filter myself. I try to embrace all my flaws. So for me, it isn't a perception. I even once consulted with a social media specialist, a branding agent, and all she did was critique my social media. She said, "You're not doing this, you're not doing this, you're not doing this." And she said, "You could do this to monetize this, to get better." And everything she said was completely correct. But I didn't care. And I still haven't changed the way that I use. In fact, I have a time limit on my phone, which allows me social media for 45 minutes a day. And once I'm done, my phone locks me out. And my little sister has the code. So I have to ask her permission. And each time I get close to doing that, she asks me, "What do you want it for?" And I explain it to her, and she says, "No, that's not good enough reason. Just wait till tomorrow."
Wow.
So I put these things to safeguard my addiction to social media, but also to protect my brainwaves from this need or this possibility of constantly reinventing yourself. I'm not interested in that at all.
Right. I think this is excellent advice for any of the up-and-coming creative entrepreneurs in today's day and age. And what you said about embracing your past work, for me, as someone whose primary job is to write, I think I felt goosebumps when you said that because I feel the same way. I see some of the work I wrote 5 years ago and I was like, what was I thinking? But embrace all your parts, all your past and your present. Final question, Inua, and this is something of an elephant in the creative room, which is AI. And the fact that it has enabled many to think that they are doing creative work just because they put in a few prompts. Whether or not that classifies as creative work is a different conversation to have. But, creative folks in general cannot afford to have echo chambers. Like, we cannot have yes men around us all the time. But what AI does now, when you put in a prompt and say, "Hey, I have this idea," is it gives you a virtual pat on the back by saying, "Great idea, great, great, whatever." What are your thoughts on how this could potentially change the landscape of creativity and what this could mean for creativity in the future ahead?
Yeah, that's a very great question. As a Nigerian, I'm a naturally skeptical person, deeply sarcastic. And as a poet, I'm my own worst critic. So when I'm talking to a machine that keeps on patting me on my back, I already know it's talking absolute rubbish, and I never take it for any morsel of truth. I just think this is an algorithm I'm speaking to. But I think that attitude to AI is very much rooted in my Nigerian identity, in the culture of survival, of questioning, which is, the secret ingredient in the waters that make Nigerians crazy people. So I grew up in that. I'm also an 80s baby, which means then I remember when dial-up internet was what we had. So I didn't grow up in this. Yeah. So I am really nervous of young people who are growing up surrounded by yes men, whether it's educators who are terrified of the parents, who are terrified of the governors, therefore always try to compliment students rather than giving them harsh criticisms. I think my advice to writers, to all creators, is to have a circle of trust of people you know who have your best interest at heart, who value you. Therefore, whenever they're critiquing you, you know it's given with love, however harsh it is. Yeah. And encourage them to have people like that, and also to be that for other people. That way, whatever the computer says, whether it's, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger like a machine, like a Terminator coming up, etc. What are these embodiments of a quote unquote higher knowledge systems or hive mind technology? You learn to distrust it. Yeah. So much of art comes from your relationship with your heart, which in some ways is your relationship with the creator. And you can't allow a machine to get in the way of that, because what speaks to you is beyond this physical world. It's something magical, it's something sprinkled with fairy dust, it's something in the realm of quantum physics, and in something of the thoughts that precede language. And all of that is emotional, all of that is feeling, and the computers can never get away of that. People can help you access that. So a circle of trust, and always keep accessing that.
Yes, 100%. Inua Ellams, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on Entrepreneur News. Thank you very much for your time.
Cool, thank you.